Skin falling off bones, flesh being torn asunder, horrific transformations taking place right before your very eyes. We've all seen our fair share of truly disturbing moments in horror movies. They add to the mystique, the allure, the controversy. Of course, some moments stand out more than others, and once you see an especially upsetting bit, you'll probably be looking for more. So let's keep it going and count down the top 5 most disturbing scenes in horror movies, part 6. Coming in at number 5, room 237 from The Shining. A whole lot of different elements come together to make Stanley Kubrick's adaptation of the Stephen King classic a lasting nightmare. For years, people have analyzed and dissected this movie to try and figure out just what makes it so gosh darn spooky. Documentaries about this fervent obsession have been produced, books have been written, and of course there's all the fan theories to be found online. There are so many insane moments here that have managed to burn themselves into the collective consciousness of cinema lovers everywhere. We've got the creepy twins beckoning to Danny and the resulting deluge of blood that's released from these slowly opening elevator doors. All work and no play is a common quotation from those referencing what they love about the movie, and this creepy revelation leads into the even more iconic "Here's Johnny." Then there's the creepy bear man doing God knows what when Jack walks in on him. That, for whatever reason, has managed to scar an incredible amount of people. But if we want a moment that can swing with the pros when it comes to being disturbing, we've got to look to the legendary room 237. Folks are warned away from this room, whose digits coincidentally form the sum 13. However, Danny still decides it's worth exploring. Curious and presented with a wide open door, Danny carefully makes his way into the room. This results in some screaming and unexplained bruises, so Jack decides to take a look himself. There, he sees a beautiful woman in the bath, stark naked. Interested, he walks towards her with the intent to smooch, and they do just that, locking lips in front of the mirror. However, during this steamy embrace, Jack notices that this woman looks a little bit different in the reflection. Turns out this is not a beautiful, alive woman at all. It's a decrepit, elderly woman with flesh rotting off her body and clumps of hair falling away from her head. Ever taken a sip of what you assumed was Sprite and then got tonic water instead? Well, actually, maybe this example is more like thinking you're getting a milkshake and ending up with a mouthful of spoiled cream. Either way, for both Jack and the audience, the sudden realization that this woman is barely more than a rotten corpse comes as an unwelcome shock. It's gonna take a very long time to watch that bad taste out of your mouth. Yuck. Coming in at number 4, Seth falls apart from The Fly. Poor Brundlefly, the first of its kind, destined to be the last. In the end, it's probably for the best, especially considering how filthy this Bugman is, but still, you gotta feel for the guy. And these feelings of sympathy are what make this scene so especially upsetting to think about. Just like The Shining, there are plenty of scenes here that stand out as horrific and iconic. The bar fight arm break is astonishing, and Seth Brundle's final transformation is incredibly grotesque. But the in-between, where the change is taken over but the man still clings to his humanity, that's where the true nightmare fuel is. There's the scene where Seth looks into the mirror and realizes he's likely bitten off more than he can chew. His fingernails come off as if they were simply sticky tacked into place, and his body is starting to take on some noticeable visual changes. But when Ronnie shows up to his apartment/laboratory and sees how deeply the teleportation has affected him, that's when the terror hits the hardest. She witnesses Seth in an absolute state, almost unrecognizable thanks to the transformation. His skin is extra puffy and he seems to be developing some sort of dark exoskeleton, and he no longer consumes food like a human. He's regurgitating stomach acid onto donuts and then slurping up the goop. And he's afraid of what he's becoming, or what he's already become. This is the moment that Ronnie realizes it's gone too far, and with that, the audience feels it too. The wax wings are melting, and Seth Brundle will soon be no more. Mixing body horror with the fear of the unknown, this scene is one of the most powerful in the movie. My goodness. Coming in at number 3, Revenge from Maniac. It's always a lot of fun to cheer against the main character, right? Like, there are anti-heroes and unlikable protagonists, but Joe Spinell's character Frank in the OG Maniac is straight up detestable. He gets a tragic backstory that sort of explains why he likes to go around brutally murdering innocent women, but man, do you want this guy to get his comeuppance. However, when it actually happens, it's hard to feel anything other than horrified and dirty. Throughout the flick, we witness plenty of disturbing behavior from our titular maniac, from cornering girls in the subway to blowing heads to bits with a shotgun to sneakily impersonating a photographer in order to gain access to victims' homes. This dude is straight up vile. But the aftermath of his kills managed to be even more disgusting, as he likes to staple these scalps of dead women to mannequins in his awful little apartment. Just imagine the smell. In the end, he does get his just desserts though. After a total mental breakdown and shovel to the arm, he makes it back to his apartment full of hair. He's hallucinating though, and sees all of his victims coming back to life as undead mannequin people. And they are not happy to see him. They converge upon him and start mutilating his body with an assortment of weapons. After sufficiently torturing him, they tear his head off in a flourish of excellent 80s prop head sculpting. The grime, filth, and surreal qualities of this scene make for one hell of a filmic fever dream, and a sequence that is not easily forgotten. Now go take a shower. Coming in at number 2, Television, from Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer. This character study is usually in the conversation while discussing the most disturbing movies of all time. An in-depth look at the life of a serial killer and his even less redeemable buddy, there's a whole lot of narciness to contend with. However, when Otis pops in a home movie the two made together while killing a family of 3, and takes it to a whole other level. On a screen within the screen, we're subjected to Otis and Henry's brutal assault of this trio. Otis restrains the woman and strips off some of her clothing, and we can see that the husband is tied up with a bloody bag over his head on the floor. Things get worse when their son comes home and Henry has to put the camera down to subdue him. He throws the son to the floor and snaps his neck, which prompts Otis to do the same with the woman. Then, Henry finishes the bound man off with a knife. It sounds like pretty standard slasher fare, right? But because we're watching this all done up in home movie style, it becomes even more brutal. By watching it on the TV that Otis and Henry are sitting in front of, we become part of it. This is the kind of thing that stays with you long after you watched it because it elicits so many emotions. It's intense and visceral and feels all too real. And after all is said and done, and Henry seems like he's finished watching, Otis starts rewinding the tape. He wants to watch it again. And coming in at number 1, Final Montage, from Salo, or the 120 Days of Sodom. This entire movie hinges on the suffering of young people at the hands of wealthy Italian libertines in the time of the fascist Republic of Salo. These poor people are subjected to all sorts of graphic violence and psychological torture for 4 months, or 120 days. To be honest, most of what happens here isn't going to fly with YouTube's algorithm, so I'll leave it up to you to figure it out for yourself. If you're the kind of person who can handle the kind of content one would expect from an exploitation film, then maybe go ahead and give it a watch. If you're looking for the crazy kills and wild special effects one might expect from a slasher or monster movie, it might not be for you. Salo is notorious for good reasons and lives up to the hype in most ways. So what I'm trying to say here is proceed with caution. Sloshy blood and guts is one thing, but realistic torture can be hard to stomach. There we go. Lots and lots of despicable, disturbing scenes to fly through. Hopefully I padded your backlog a little or gave you something brand new to watch. So what do you think of the list? Do you agree with my choices? Were you expecting August Underground and a Serbian film? Maybe next time. What is the most disturbing horror movie scene of all time? Make sure you let me know down in the comments. Speaking of comments, let's take a look at some of your more pleasant ones from the top 5 horror TV shows that deserve your attention. El Finn says The Exorcist 2016-17 is criminally underrated. It was the first and only show to actually give me nightmares. Good pick. CZito Music says Tales from the Crypt will always be my absolute favorite, but Creepshow 2019 is a fantastic watch. I definitely need to check out Channel Zero. I've heard so many good things about it, lol. Horror anthologies with goofy hosts, always a blast, right? Randall Petroelhe says, bless your heart for turning me and some friends onto something that's truly awesome and horror at the same time. I do my best. Eric Howry says, great video, Keegan. Did you ever hear or watch a series called Freddy's Nightmares, 1988 to 1990? These were horror stories mixed with Freddy Krueger. If you haven't seen them, you have to check them out. More anthologies with wicked hosts. Let's go. And Project REAN says, for me it wasn't a TV show. Crypt TV is a YouTube that gives you a vast variety of creepy short videos. And Crypt TV is absolutely killing it, pun intended. So many good monsters. And that's the time we have for today. I'm gonna plug my toaster in next to the swimming pool. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. And then there's the creepy revelation that nope. Folks are warned away from this room, whose digits coincidentally form the sum 13. However, during their steamy embrace, Jack notices that the woman looks a little bit Jack notices that this woman looks a little different in the reflection than he originally thought. Nope.